Okay, ready to go. That's right, I've referenced him so many times in my reviews I decided to go all the way with this one. So for this review, call me the Silver Snob. Ever since I started doing this show, I've gotten a lot of requests to review popular movies. Just to name a few, there's Spirited Away, the first two Jurassic Park films, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and other movies I'll never get to talk about because due to YouTube copyright, I don't get to talk about good things on the internet. I get garbage!
Sucks to be you. I don't review movies.
Oh. Everyone, that's Hella, the quote-unquote Phantom of the Flames. She's trying to haunt me, but she's more annoying than she is scary.
The reason why I'm more annoying is so that you can get pissed off by it.
Uh-huh.
Sucks to be you.
Okay, let's see what we can find. Full movies, let's see. No. 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 Double no. No. What's this? London After Midnight? London After Midnight? Someone found a print of London After Midnight? Not really. It's just a reconstruction. In reality, all it is a series of surviving stills and publicity photos from the movie, edited together to form a somewhat coherent plot. For those of you that don't know, London After Midnight was a horror mystery from 1927 starring Lon Chaney, who some of you may remember as Eric from The Phantom of the Opera. After the movie's release, London After Midnight was lost to time. No one knows exactly why, but a lot of people speculate it was due to the MGM Vault fire of '65. In 1965, a storage facility at MGM Studios' backlot caught fire and hundreds of films were destroyed, and it's believed that all the film reels of London After Midnight were stored in that vault. Since then, London After Midnight has become the holy grail of horror films. So the fact that someone was able to retell the story with all these pictures and release it on a Lon Chaney DVD... Wait, since I'm doing a tribute to the Cinema Snob, do I find it unique or tasteless?
Nah, it just means you have no taste.
Why am I even talking about this? At this point, I'm just reviewing a picture show. Which I guess is what movies were first seen as when they were invented. But if you take the fact that it's lost out of the equation, you're left with a forgotten movie, yes, but more importantly, a forgotten movie with a cult following. And that's why I'm reviewing it. Well, that's a good way to start a movie. A murder. This here is Edward Burke, an inspector who's investigating the death of the man who was killed in the opening, as he questions the man's neighbor, John Hamlin, and the man's daughter, Lucille. How do I know who they are? Because the intertitles tell us exactly who they are. I have to say, that's an effective way of establishing your characters when your audience probably doesn't really care. And now you know the rest of the story. No, it doesn't end there, as hilarious as that would be. We cut to years later as these two pass by the house of the man who was killed, as they see that the supposed abandoned house is actually being lived in. I liked vampires with top hats before they became cool. Joking aside, I really like Lon Chaney's look here. This character is known as the man in the beaver skin hat, And while I can see a lot of people finding it silly, I actually like the design. It has a bit of the classic vampire look that caught on later, and also has a slight Jack the Ripper vibe. The mouthful of sharp teeth is the cherry on top of the shake. In fact, I can actually see this guy fitting in as one of the classic movie monsters, like Dracula and the Frankenstein monster. If only there was still a movie to put this guy in. So what are these creepy characters gonna do? I, I, ugh. So, in some horror movies, you see the creepy characters stalking a victim, waving a cape, killing people. In this movie, you see him discuss house ownership. So the creepy guy tells them they have guests coming over, and this woman faints. Not because she thinks they're vampires, but because this girl is giving Bill Engvall material for future jokes.
Like, she's got a little friend who's into this goth stuff. Oh my God. Have you seen these little freaks? What happened? The black nail polish, black lipstick, black eyeliner, black hair, liquid paper, white face. I'm sorry, didn't we used to call that Halloween?
So, as you can imagine, a lot of people think that the house of the dead guy from earlier is haunted, which makes them anxious since James is keeping it.
Well, that's a haunting statement.
Get used to her, folks. She will never go away. Even the Ghostbusters couldn't get rid of her. So James calls Professor Burke over because he thinks that the two creepy people leasing the house are linked to the man who was killed in the beginning, which is more reasonable than thinking they're vampires. However, there may be some truth to the vampire myth since the man leasing the dead man's house has the same name as the dead man himself.
And the plot thickens!
So later that night, we see James and Inspector Burke inspect the man's tomb, only to find it empty. I have to say, so far, this plot's intriguing for a movie made in the 20s. But if someone does a twist like that in a movie today, I will be too good for it. But despite all of this, Burke is really skeptical about the opinion that there's vampires living in the old house. Oh, wait, there's actually a reason for that. You'll see why in a bit. The maid, however, screams as we discover that she's encountered the creepy guy again, after a flashback which ends with the maid claiming he flew out the window. They also spot the creepy girl outside, who's only credited as Batgirl. Well, hey, unlike that movie, this film actually got released. Which almost doesn't matter since it's now lost. Yes, I do believe they're vampires. After all, she's as still as a corpse. But despite all of this, Burke still refuses to call the police. The movie will explain why later, and it won't make much sense. The next day, two men go to the house that the vampires were seen in. Everything stopping them from finding the vampires. First, the Sci-Fi Channel seems to be filming a spider movie there. Then, automatic doors are acting too high and mighty. Nicolas Cage's bear suit from Wicker Man seems to have been stolen. And worst of all, Gawain from Between the Lions has nowhere to go. Meanwhile, Burke talks to Lucille and tells her... Wait, how did you find that out? So Burke and James go back to the dead man's house and find not only the prototype vampires, but the dead man himself. Yes, you're helpless before creatures that have more surviving skills than you. But never mind the scary people, as they go back to Lucille's room and find that it's trashed and Lucille is gone. And while that's happening, we see that the reason Burke was being skeptical about the vampires is because they're working for him.
He's a vampire too?
No, that would make too much sense. The real reason is even more stupid. James returns to the house and gets captured as he's locked in a room, and we learn a twist, or at least I think that's what they want it to be. Of course! Burke was the man in the hat all along. And what about the scene where Burke was supposed to witness the vampires? How was he in two places at once? Well, that leads to the biggest letdown of the movie. Turns out they're not real vampires. At least I don't think. From what I pieced together, they're just actors, and Burke hired them to pose as vampires. I only like fake vampire movies when Nickelodeon does them. Wait, no, I don't! And what about Lucille's father, you may ask? I think he's just an actor too, but I'm not entirely sure. Also, there was supposedly a scene where some of the actors flew. How did they achieve that if they're not vampires? Plus, I could be wrong about this, but I was told that at one point Chaney's character turned into smoke. If that scene really happened, how did a fake vampire pull that off? Even a real vampire would find that difficult. I don't understand this movie. So James goes to save Lucille but runs into Burke, who's disguised as the vampire. And through several surviving images my producer saw in junior high school, Burke hypnotizes James. Of course he can do that. And tricks him into thinking it's 5 years ago. Why? Get this. Burke has suspected James to be the person who killed Lucille's father all along, and he thinks that hiring someone to play the part of the father and hypnotize James will cause him to reenact the murder. You got anything?
To be honest, it feels like something I do as a prank.
The plan works and James is revealed to be the killer, but why was the vampire setup necessary? Couldn't he just hypnotize James and ask if he was the murderer? I was told most people under hypnosis don't lie. And if this reenactment plan was really necessary, couldn't he have just hired the father lookalike? What did the fake vampires accomplish? Other than denting Burke's wallet. To quote Boots to Reboots,
You know what? Keep it simple, stupid.
so James is revealed as the killer, and the end. Well, that was London After Midnight, and you know what? This was a mess. Even if the film was never lost, the twists and plot points are so nonsensical that it really does distract, and it gets in the way of a lot of great things in this movie. If this were a German expressionist film, maybe it may have worked better, something that relies more on visuals rather than title cards, but it's clearly trying to tell a complex story, so it doesn't really mesh. Which is a shame because I like the surviving visuals, and I like that it was trying something new. But it just doesn't work. Maybe if they find a surviving print, I'll do a follow-up video. But for now, I'm sure film historians and horror fans are gonna want me dead for saying this. It's not worth it. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and in case you're wondering, yes, Hella is gonna be here for a lot of videos. I can't get rid of her. And also, don't worry, I'm not gonna be the Silver Snob forever. I'll be back to my old self in the next video. Until then...